I thought you were gonna say it has like pillows on it or some shit.
No, that's totally cliche. Hello, friends. Welcome to User Friendly episode 15. 15 episodes. Hard to believe we're already there. My name is Erfon Elijah. I am a writer for Cult of Mac and the founder of the cool indie clothing brand MyTees.com. And I have here with me my friend
Roberto Hoyos from Throwboy.com. How is it going today?
It is going well because we're doing an episode of User Friendly, the best podcast on the internet, I dare say. If you like staring at two guys talk at normal volumes about all things tech, our favorite stuff on the web, and things that are geeky in general.
That's right.
And I'm doing a lot better this week. If you watched last week, you know that I was kind of sick, and I had 2 podcasts I had to do, and it's not fun doing a podcast. That was probably one of the worst colds I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah, and it was sucked because it's like especially my other podcast is audio, and so people don't even get to see us. I can't distract them with my good looks, and all they're listening to is my voice, and I just sounded like I had Greg voice, aka I had smoked 3 packs of Ultra Vietnam Reds for the last 30 years.
Hey, brother.
That's pretty much exactly what I sounded like. And we were doing the podcast. Leonard's he's like, Jesus, what's wrong with you? He's like, you do a podcast like this? I was like, dude, I don't really have much choice. And we're interviewing.
Like one of those things.
Yeah.
Like,
hey guys, what's going on? And we're interviewing this guy who had just released this book, which we're actually going to talk about. And this guy had called us on his cell phone in a busy restaurant, and here I am hacking my lungs out in the background.
I couldn't hear anything like that. Did you have to edit out stuff like?
No, I didn't.
Coughing or anything?
No, but my mic is really good about only isolating sound that's right in front of it. So it's on a studio arm above my desk, so I swing it down in front of me. So and when I have to cough, I'm just like, and then I just bring it back down.
Cough button.
Very
radio of you there. Well, cool.
Yeah, so I feel much better now. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for the Avengers movie, and I think that people in the camera here
are you really?
Are really excited too. Yeah.
Wow.
Dude, if you're like a geek like me, I think that, oh my god, it looks so cool, right?
Yeah. What about that movie looks cool? I really don't know. I saw the preview where they're circling and it's like Robert Downey Jr.
Circle.
It's that Thor dude. And I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. And then they scroll down to Scarlett Johansson holding a bow and arrow, and I was like, this is going to be the worst movie of the year.
Oh, no. You don't like comic books or comic book movies,
I'm not a huge comic book fan,
Do you like any comic book movies?
Dude, I loved the reboot of the Batman movies. Like the Dark Knight movies were fantastic.
You don't like any of the Marvel stuff?
I haven't seen Iron Man.
Oh, you
at
haven't
all.
seen Iron Man?
No, I'm like the only
movie.
person. I've heard it's actually really good.
Yeah.
And I think out of all the ones that are out, I would probably really enjoy Iron Man because it's kind of funny. Like, kind of makes fun of itself. The Thor movie...
It doesn't really make fun of it, so...
It doesn't? Oh, I thought Robert Downey Jr. kind of hammed it up during that movie.
Yeah, but that's what the character's like. But he doesn't act like this is dumb. It's not like Dukes of Hazzard with freaking Jessica Simpson.
Wait, Jessica Simpson's not in it? Now I really don't want to see it.
Those are the worst kinds of movies where it's like the source material and they're just like, we're just going to make fun of it the whole time. It's like, screw you. I like that the Marvel franchise is finally being able to put out their movies under their own studio. So it's like... they did Iron Man and they did Thor and like all these other movies. So now they can actually do this movie that's like a fan movie that would never see the light of day if it was like, oh, Sony did this movie and this other studio, Fox, did this movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
And this studio did this movie. There's no way in hell. Like, you'll never see, at least for not a long time, a Justice League movie, which is Superman, Batman, and like Wonder Woman, all these people in one movie. Yeah, freaking right.
If you did see it, you wouldn't see it the way the Avengers is doing it, which was actually one of the things I was excited about that I thought was really awesome, that all these individual actors had their own movies.
Right.
And now they're all in a movie together.
Right.
I was like, dude, how much are they spending on casting?
And it was planned that way because at the end of each one of these other single movies, they had a teaser of them like meeting somebody from the other movie.
Oh, really?
So it was really, really cool. Like,
wow, I didn't know that. That is really cool.
So, yeah, I know you're not into comics, but
does Scarlett Johansson have her own movie?
She's in Iron Man pretty much, like.
But she doesn't have her own character.
Yeah, she's a Black Widow in Iron Man.
Oh, so she plays that character in Iron Man.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she wasn't just like slapped onto this or something.
But did you like the Thor movie? I mean, like,
I didn't really like that movie, but like,
I didn't either. I thought it was so poorly written.
I'm not a fan of Thor anyway, though. Like, I like Marvel stuff, but I never got into Thor.
I'm not really a Thor fan either. I thought the beginning part when they were in Valhalla was awesome, and then once he got down to earth, like the part that ruined it for me was the love stuff with Natalie Portman, which was so poorly written, I thought, and it was so forced. But
like all of a sudden,
when they get to Earth, right, and they're all just like walking around, it's super sunny, and they're all just in their costumes.
Oh yeah.
I was like, this just looks like a bunch of dudes walking around in costumes. Like, there's nothing super about it.
Yeah.
Like, it totally ruined the movie for me.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just guys walking around in costumes.
I actually fell asleep for some of that movie.
I'm like, Roberto, what do you think? I look over, you're just like.
And then I get out.
Yeah.
We do a review about it. That's like the Totally Rad show.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but I'm excited for it. My Friday plan is.
Is it coming out this Friday?
Yeah, this Friday.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, you have to tell me what you think about it. That was a totally tangent. We weren't even planning on talking about that movie.
Well, you asked me how I was doing.
Good, and you're doing good because you get to see Scarlett Johansson.
I'm not even a big fan of that, but anyway. So we have some different things to talk about today. We have sort of a movie we both saw that we really liked, geeky movie kind of.
Yep.
The Ken Segall.
We want to talk about Ken Segall. If you don't know who he is,
and then we have a gadget to talk about.
Whoa, we're getting crazy on this show.
Yeah, this is like all around the board here. Okay.
Well, let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be talking about These Amazing Shadows, which is a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually we talked a little bit about this movie last week when we were doing our documentary-a-thon episode, talking about documentaries, and we both really love documentaries. So you suggested I watch this movie, and we were going to talk about it this week, which I'm glad we did it that way because, well, why don't you tell us about the movie first so people know what it is.
So this movie is called These Amazing Shadows, and it's available on Netflix streaming right now if you'd like to see it. And it is about the National Film Registry. So the Library of Congress actually has a designated division that is for the sole purpose of preserving movies and for declaring movies that are like considered part of the like national culture, like to basically preserve these things in time. And it's really interesting. This whole movie, every clip that you see is in the National Film Registry, and it's amazing how many of these movies we all recognize, and they are deemed worthy to be in this National Film Registry. So, so it takes you through like all these different movies, all these different things, and they tell you like what's the reasoning behind keeping all of this stuff, and it's fascinating. Like, it's really a window into that time period if you think about it. You know, like if it was a movie done in the 20s, and a lot of these old movies don't even have film that even exists anymore because it wasn't considered like, it was just considered like marketing, you know, like why are we going to hang on to this old film? So there's actually a part of the movie where they talk about the people that their whole job is to restore old film, and they have like these old like hockey puck like worn out films that they have to take and like piece back together and tape together to preserve them. And I just thought it was really awesome, and just the wide range of things, you know, like it's not just like Citizen Kane and just like all these it's like Back to the Future is in there, and like Indiana Jones is in there,
and movies you've never heard of,
and home movies are in there, you know, like things that they found this like really old home movie from the Great Depression, and they're like, wow, this is like a time capsule of this, you know, event that happened. Like this is the best way that we can have you know, like footage or preservation of this time period, you know. And so I thought it was really, really cool. And I'm kind of a history guy too, but I just like the whole movie angle of it too. And I'd never heard of this film registry before. So you saw it yesterday. What did you think?
I watched it last night. I'd never seen it before, and it was fantastic. I mean, I was going to talk to you about it last night, but I was like, no, I just told you, I'm like, I watched it. That's all I'm going to say. And then we'll talk about it this episode. This is the first time we're having a conversation about this. It's as a documentary alone, if you like documentaries, it's a fantastic documentary. It's filmed well, it's put together well, it's edited well. it's kind of narrated by all the board members of the National Film Registry. Mm-hmm. And it does a really good job at educating you first about what the National Film Registry even is. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I didn't even know what it was.
Same here.
So it's a part of the Library of Congress, and it was created, I think, probably 35 years ago.
Yeah, it was in the 70s,
In the 70s, because Ted Turner, owner or former owner of Time Warner, or Turner Broadcasting, I take that back, Turner Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. He bought the entire MGM Grand library of movies in the 70s.
Right.
Because he's rich and he could.
Right.
And he decided that he was going to go through all these movies and colorize all of them because they were all in black and white. And this caused a huge outrage. People were really upset, especially the directors, the artists that were in the movies, the people that worked on the movies, because they're like, these movies were not made to be color. They were made to be black and white, and you are destroying their value as artistic pieces. And he basically said, screw you. They even put this in the documentary. Mm-hmm. He basically said, screw you guys. Yeah. I own these now. I can do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. So this huge group of artists and directors kind of lobbied Congress to have this National Film Registry created to protect the rights of artists and the people that worked on these movies by preserving these movies. Mm-hmm. So that if they were ever touched again, they would always have the originals in place. And of course, then it became more about the movies themselves. They realized that like 80% of all silent films, like the acetate they were filmed on had already been destroyed because acetate is so fragile.
Mm-hmm. And then one of them is really flammable.
And one of them is really highly flammable. And like by flammable, he was like, it's like a wick on a piece of dynamite. Like if you touch it with anything, it ignites.
Yeah. And they actually showed somebody
lighting it on
a little
fire.
bit of it, yeah.
And so they realized that all these movies were being destroyed just by neglect. And the reason was, as you alluded to earlier, was a lot of these movie studios had created these movies just to make money.
Yeah.
And they didn't ever think that anyone would ever care to watch these things again once they weren't popular. So they would just either through neglect let them rot, or they would like actively destroy them.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we don't need these anymore.
Especially when the talkies came in, they destroyed, like studios would destroy all of their
just
silent
to make
films,
space for their for their new
like
films.
No one's ever gonna want to see this again, you know? So.
Exactly, which is just such a travesty. Mm-hmm. So the National Film Registry every year picks 25 movies through this board of actors and directors and stuff that are on it, and they preserve the original negatives or whatever the films were made from, so they can never be harmed or whatever. And some of the movies are really popular, like Godfather. Like the film reel on those were in such bad repair, it took them like many hours to totally what do you call restore them.
Yeah, because they were like really messed up.
Yeah,
and they said that when films are super like the negative is been replicated, it just it what do you call it, degrades it.
Yeah, it deteriorates.
It deteriorates it, and they're like, it's basically the most popular ones have just been loved to death.
They get loved to death, right?
Yeah.
So in that fact, in that regard, the documentary is excellent because it tells you about the National Film Registry and what it is. But then I think for me, the part about it I love the most is it really goes through and talks about like why people love movies and what movies do for our culture. And one of the things I think that kind of stayed with me was the fact that before movies, what is that weird noise?
Car.
Some POS outside ruining our podcast. If I was a terrorist, I would get my bazooka.
I bet it's not on the audio.
It might be. It might not be. Hopefully you guys aren't hearing that really crappy noise. So I think for me, the thing about
I know what you're gonna say, and I agree, but go ahead.
Okay, before movies, like our United States was a lot like other countries in that it was very tribal, right? Like the culture was very local.
Right.
You didn't really get to experience anything that was outside of your local culture, right? Because you knew the people that you knew, you had the customs that you had, you all evolved together. Yeah. And for the first time with movies, you got to see different perspectives, different points of view, and you had a really strong sense of nationalism, where you get to see your whole country as a whole and what the American experience is like, or whatever country you live in, in a much broader scale, and that is something that helped gel us as a nation.
Right.
And it helps you identify with other people, and I thought that was brilliant. I mean, like...
Just that statement in that movie, I was like, wow. Because you kind of take it for granted these days, especially with the internet and stuff. Like, we know about places all over the world, you know? But back then, your town was probably your whole world, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Unless you traveled, you know? Like, how would you know? And, yeah, the whole point about, like, it bringing the whole United States together, like... and then the world together. Like, one big thing I was thinking about when that part in the movie that you just discussed came up. My grandma's from Peru, and she came over here in the 50s. And sometimes I like to ask her stuff about Peru, and I like to ask her stuff about the olden days. And I was like, we were talking about something about I like to ask about old things about like the 40s and stuff like that, and the 30s, and a lot of the answers she had were similar to things I already know about the United States. And I was like, well, why was it the same? Like, why were you guys wearing the same stuff? And I'm like, oh, it's because of the movies. That's when the movies was becoming a thing, and that's why you knew about the fashion that was going on in the United States.
That's actually another great point, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And one funny aside, she was a seamstress, and she would she had her own shop, and she would make dresses for different people, and like some very rich people over in Peru. And she said that when some lady came to her house, and she was really rich, and she wanted to get this specific dress that was in this movie. And so, this is way before, like, video. So they had to go and get a ticket to the movie and, like, watch the movie. And then she would point it out to her in the movie, and she'd have to, like, sit there and try to sketch it real quick. And then she said she went back another time, so she bought another ticket to watch a movie and have to, like, sit through the whole movie just to see this dress, So, anyway, that was my, like, little story about that. But
that's so funny. Yeah, I think that more than anything else, the documentary really puts a great focus on what movies do for us as a culture.
Right.
And besides uniting us and giving us a glimpse, into what the culture is like at our time, it also, gives us a way to communicate with the future. It's like, you can look back into the past and you can see how men spoke to women, how women spoke to men.
Yeah.
What kind of like social mores and values we had, the way people dressed, the way people danced, the way they walked, the kinds of foods they ate, the way our country looked, the way our houses looked, the way our clothes looked. It's like all this stuff that you would just lose, it would be gone forever. It gets saved in all these rolls of film that are being preserved in the National Film Registry for other generations to see. And one of the reasons I think that is especially important is when it comes to even things that are nonfiction, like historical pieces. There was a video that a guy made from one of the Japanese internment camps during World War I?
Two.
World War II.
Yeah, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, a lot of the Japanese got rounded up and put into these internment camps.
People that had been living in the States for a long time.
just regular Japanese people.
They just looked like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, so in a paranoid fashion, the United States rounded them up, put them in these internment camps. And he was just making home movies, but in that process of making home movies of his family, he was documenting what life was like in these internment camps and what people looked like and what their houses looked like and the way they lived their lives. And it's like those kinds of things need to be seen, right? I mean, if you lose them, I hate to be cliche, but it's like, if you lose track of history, you're doomed to repeat it, right?
Yeah.
And if you lose track of History Channel, you're doomed to repeat History Channel, as my new favorite show, Workaholics, would say. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, so there's all these great pieces of film that are preserved. I don't want to beat this dead, but if you have Netflix, the movie's about an hour and 90 minutes. Or I'm sorry, 90 minutes. So an hour and a half.
Something like that, yeah.
And I would highly recommend it. It's really, really good. It's produced well, and it's just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and it won a bunch of Sundance Awards and stuff.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really good. I'm really glad that you liked it, because I was watching it and I'm like, I have to tell Erfon, my brother needs to watch this.
Oh, your brother for sure, yeah.
My brother's not only huge into history, but huge into film.
Yeah, just film in general,
and
right.
so I was like, you have to watch this, but it's like one of those things where I'm like this too, where it's hard for me to get to watch something. It's like hard to force me to do something that like I don't know, especially like, hey, go check out this band, hey, go check out this movie. I'm just like,
you're like, oh dude,
I'll get around to it.
Yeah, totally gonna do that. Yeah, oh, that band, yeah, I'm gonna check them out.
So I was hounding him, like, watch this movie or what we're talking about it. Watch it because we're talking about it.
Well, one last thing about watching this movie. If you guys are like us, I'm sure you probably do this too. Do you, when you watch movies, do you do other things?
Yeah, usually.
I do too.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's an attribute of our generation. It's like we're always on our computers, we're on our iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided when I started this movie that I was not going to be on my computer. I wasn't going to be on my phone. I was gonna immerse myself in the experience that was this documentary, and that's something that I feel like I don't do nearly often enough. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the reasons I hardly ever watch new movies is because I'm always doing something, and I don't want to like miss stuff.
Yeah.
And I only reserve.
I get like that too, dude.
You
like,
do?
Even in the theater, sometimes I'm like edging for my phone, and I'm like, okay, don't.
I did that last night.
And sometimes I will take it out, you know.
And just trying to check your email real fast. I did that last night, so I paused the movie. I was like, this means I need a break. I'm gonna pause the movie. I'm gonna walk around for a little bit, do some push-ups, work on the pecs, blast out a set, and then I was back to it.
It's funny that you say this immersed into the movie part because of even in the very beginning, somebody is talking about how, you know, you go into the movie and then, you know, you don't talk to anyone, the lights go down, and you're immersed into this movie, and you come out and you've changed a little bit, you know, you've learned something or you feel a different way. And I always felt like that, but I didn't know that was like a normal everybody thing for like normal, like everyone felt that way. Like I would leave, you know, like watching like Back to the Future just like totally like dumbfounded. You know?
Dude, I was amped. Yeah, I loved that movie.
And like those kinds of things, those kinds of experiences where you're just like, now you see the world at a different angle in some ways, you know?
Totally.
And yeah, this movie does a really good job of not only, like you said, like educating you what this thing is, but also just, you know, why are movies important? And I think
it's kind of like a love letter to movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, here's why we love them, and here's why we need to make sure that we preserve them for the future,
right? Because
we're not doing that. So, These Amazing Shadows on Netflix now. Our sponsor, Netflix.
Go check it out. All right. So this next one's a little bit of you.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool. For those of you that watch our show regularly, you know I do another podcast called The Cult Cast. It's an Apple-centric conversation. We call it the best 30-minute Apple conversation you'll hear all week. And I do it for this website called Cultamac. And we have access to some pretty big tech names. And we recently had on this guy named Ken Segall. And you've probably never heard of Ken Segall. I hadn't before he just released his new book. And it was called Insanely Simple, Apple's Obsession with Simple Things. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact title, but it's called Insanely Simple. Yeah, if you could look it up, that would be great. Sure. And he just released this book, so he's doing a ton of, like, you know, promotion for it. And we asked if he could come on and talk about his book, and he was like, oh, I'm doing all these other promotional things. He's like, I can give you 5 or 10 minutes. So we're like, great. We kind of planned this whole show around him. Call him up. He's at a restaurant. He's like, I got to leave my table to do this interview, so I can only give you like 5 minutes because my sushi is on the way. Mm-hmm. The Obsession That Drives Apple's Success. Insanely Simple. It's on Amazon. Doing very well, by the way. Very highly regarded, highly reviewed book. And so we're like, okay, so we call him and we start talking to him, and he ends up giving us like 30 or 40 minutes. He's having a great time talking with us. And the reason he was such a fascinating person to talk to is because Ken Segall was Steve Jobs' ad guy. He was the creative director, I believe, for TWA Chiat Day, Apple's longtime ad agency. They've created the Think Different campaign. They named the iMac. Mm-hmm. And he has all these wonderful stories about what it was like to work, you know, with Steve Jobs, what Steve Jobs was like to work with, his creative process, what it was like to get yelled at by Steve Jobs. Right. He has all these stories. I mean, he was going on and on and on about Steve Jobs. So we had him on, and we had this great conversation with him. And I think one of the things that surprised me the most, and we've actually talked about this before, was Steve Jobs would romanticize an idea of something he wanted to do, And sometimes those ideas wouldn't be very good, but he was still romanticizing them. Like, for example, when they were coming out with this computer, it's called the iMac, and Ken Segall was working with Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs was like, we have this great new computer, you need to come see it. So they come to the Apple campus, and they go through all these corridors and into this room, and the computer was veiled, and he unveils it, right? And they're looking at this, like, this plastic, like, colorful computer, and Steve Jobs is like, we want to call it the Mac Man.
Yeah.
And I was just like totally dumbfounded. I was like, that is such a terrible name. And Steve was totally in love with it. He's like, but he kind of gave them some like talking points about the computer. He's like, we want you to come up with some names. So Ken Segall goes back with his team, and they start talking about all these different names, and they come up with iMac. And he's like, it makes sense because one of the things that Steve Jobs said about the iMac is you'll be connected to the internet in 10 minutes or less.
Right. It was the big selling point is the internet Macintosh.
Right. So he was like, it stood for internet, it stood for all these other things, innovation, all these other things that started with I. So we're going to go pitch iMac, right? That's our thing. So he goes and he tells Steve, and Steve's like, kind of like Mac Man better. And everyone was like, he's like, well, we really think iMac works for all these reasons.
Yeah.
And Steve's like, well, go back to the drawing board and come up with some more names and come back to me a week later. So they do that, and they come back to Steve a week later. And since that time, the idea of iMac has really grown on Steve. And he's really starting to love it. And that's what they ended up picking. And now we have this computer called the iMac. But he has all these really wonderful details about Steve's personality, what it was like to argue with Steve. He told us a story about this ad campaign where he wanted to have, I think it was Jeff Goldblum narrate it.
Yeah, and that is an ad. Yeah.
Oh, did they get Jeff Goldblum to do it?
Oh, yeah, actually, he's done quite a few of their voiceovers.
Oh, really? He initially wanted to have, I forget the guy's name. He's like an African civil rights leader.
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela do it. And Ken was talking about, he was trying to get Nelson Mandela to do this Mac ad. And Ken was talking to Steve Jobs on the phone. They were talking about something Apple related. And Steve gets another call. He's like, oh, Ken, you got to hold on. I got another call. So Ken's like, all right. So he switches over. He's gone for a few minutes. He comes back. And he was like, that was Bill Clinton. And Ken was like, Kurt president at the time, right? And Ken was like, oh yeah, it was Bill Clinton. He was like, no, it was Bill Clinton. He's like, I really was trying to get Nelson Mandela to do this advertisement for us. He's like, and I didn't know who to ask, so I just called Bill Clinton and asked him to talk to him for me. Right. So Bill Clinton, for whatever reason, did that. And Nelson Mandela didn't want to do it, but at least Bill Clinton had tried. And he's just like, oh yeah, it was Bill Clinton, like Nelson can't do it.
Yeah,
he's busy fighting apartheid. Yeah, but don't worry, we got Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, remember that guy from that movie who melted? Yeah, we got him. He's gonna do it. He's just as good. He's got curly hair. He's kind of darker skinned. It's going to work out great. So it was just a really wonderful conversation. If you want to hear the entire thing, it's probably about 35 minutes. Go to iTunes, search Cultcast. It's episode
Cult
number...
of Mac usually. I tried to search Cultcast. Cultcast, one word, or Cult of Mac.
Yeah, Cultcast should bring it up. But there's a Chinese website that is stealing our content and republishing it on iTunes. No way. So make sure you're downloading it from the Cultcast and not from... Yeah. And I believe it's episode 10. And it really is a fantastic conversation from Ken Segall, 12 years of experience being, Steve Jobs' main go-to guy. It was a ton of fun. It was so amazing talking to somebody who knew Steve in such an intimate way. I mean, he wasn't like his best friend, but like he had a 12-year working relationship with the guy.
Yeah.
Dude helped name the iMac and helped create the Think Different ad campaign.
Yeah, especially on the whole presentation of Apple's resurgence, Because that was a very big deal,
Yep.
Getting Apple away from the old Apple, in the 90s Apple that was just forgotten about and everything like that, and had terrible marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really did. It got so bad there for such a long time.
I was gonna say, to your point of Steve being like sort of adamant about certain things, and then being able to be swayed in other ways. Like, that's one thing that I think we talked about this, and you were kind of surprised that he didn't have his hand in everything, and like coming up with like the perfect name right off the bat for every kind of product. Like, surprised that he didn't like the name iPad and stuff like that, and that he actually did care about people's opinions for certain things, and he could be sold on ideas a lot of the times, and ideas would grow on him and then become, oh, now they're his idea instead of your idea anymore, And one of the things that actually came to mind was this book I talk about, The Second Coming of Steve Jobs, is a book that I've had on my iPod forever, so it always comes up in shuffle, and I'll just listen to some of it. But when he was with Next, when he created the company Next, right after he left Apple, one of the big things was he hired Paul Rand to do the Next logo, and he paid $100,000 for Paul Rand to do this Next logo.
$100,000 for the logo.
And Paul Rand is known for a lot of his logos, like he and ad campaigns. Like, he did this really famous one for IBM, and Steve, Paul Rand tells him, Steve goes, "Can you give me a few options?" And Paul Rand's like, "No, I'll give you a logo. You'll pay me for it, and that's the logo. I'll give you the right logo, right?" And so he presents Steve with the Next logo, which is this black cube that's tilted at an angle and it says Next with different colors. And he presents Steve with a pamphlet explaining the reason for the logo and for the lowercase e that's in the logo. And this is one of those things that stuck out to me because Steve is definitely like, he likes that sort of thing. He likes that sort of presentation. So he says, he presented his design to Steve along with a pamphlet explaining the lowercase e could stand for education, excellence, expertise, exceptional, excitement, E equals MC square. And said the logo brims with the informality and friendliness of a Christmas seal and the authority of a rubber stamp. And Steve read the explanation and was so enthused that he rushed to embrace the professor. So that's totally like a Steve Jobs thing, in my opinion. Like, he can be sold on these ideas, but they have to be really well presented. They can't just be like, well, we think Next is a good name. It's like, it has to be like built up and that sort of thing,
Yeah, one of the things Ken said, I don't recall the story he was in which this was brought up, but, like, if Steve Jobs didn't feel like you were passionate about your argument, it was kind of easy for him to disregard it. Like, if you're arguing something, you have to be passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And that passion is really what could sway him. Like, because I think for me, just in my own mind, that's probably what emotionally charged the argument. And I think that Steve Jobs was really dictated largely by his emotions. And if he didn't feel strongly about something, he didn't do it.
Right.
And you had to get him excited about something in order for him to sign on. It wasn't just like, you couldn't be Spock and say, like, this is logical and this is why we should do this, because that didn't work with him. Like, if you weren't passionate about your idea and emotionally attached to it in some way, I feel like he was just kind of like, this is crap. Mm-hmm. Go back to the drawing board before I karate chop your trachea. Which was a classic Steve Jobs move, if you didn't know. Many tracheas were injured in Apple's 10-year history.
But yeah, go check out that book. I'm gonna go get it too. The Insane.
I want to get it too because I haven't read it, but yeah, I want to check it out too. But so anyway.
So one last topic. Yeah. We'll try to wrap this up. I just recently got into the 21st century and bought a television.
You bought a television?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Oh well, I had to. Well, I didn't have to, but I bought this Apple TV like box. It's not an Apple TV. And the reason I was just at Target and I was like, wait, this hooks up to any TV? Okay, I have this piece of crap TV. I'll hook it up to there. Maybe I can watch Netflix on it. And that just spurred me to get an actual TV because it looks so bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just bought this little Sony TV box. And I was really impressed with it because it lets you do, all the Apple TV stuff. It lets you do Netflix. It lets you do Hulu Plus. But it lets you do a lot of other stuff. It lets you do Amazon Instant Video, which I did recently to watch Mission Impossible, which was really easy because, like, nowadays everyone is like overlapping with the content they have, you know. So I was like, oh cool, I'll watch it on this channel. So it has a lot of other channels, and and lets you do Pandora and lots of other things. But it also has a USB plug on the side, so you can actually plug in just like a torrent file and like play it on your TV. And you can get this software for it that's called Views. And you can play basically any file will play back on it, like AVI files and WMA and MPEG-4 and MPEG-2 and whatever. And I was like, wow, this is surprisingly open for a Sony product that it lets you do all this different stuff.
And I was going to ask you why you chose it over an Apple TV, but now it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's, like, it's just so much more.
And I was like, because at first I was like, well, I have a MacBook Pro now. I'll just, I'll get one of those cables and plug it in. But then I was like, dude, this thing's like, what was it, $60 to get this thing? Apple TV's $100, and it does way more than an Apple TV.
Wow.
And so anyway, I brought it over and I hooked it up to Erfon's TV, and I was gonna show it to you. I'm gonna record this and edit this in. So anywho,
Let's see what she's copped in.
Yes. So here's the little remote it comes with, but it also actually has an iPad.
Or an iPhone?
Or iPhone remote that you can do. But it's not that good. It actually just replicates what this looks like.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
There's an engineer's decision for you.
Yeah, this is totally like, while you're watching this, there's definitely things that Apple would have done a really much better job at. But anyway, so I'll take you through here. So yeah, photos, whatever. Music, you can do NPR radio, which is kind of cool. Pandora, those are the ones I've been using. But then it has a crap load of other weird ones that I've never touched. I'm sure, some companies
I like
pay
that
to
it
be on
has
this
NPR.
box.
That's really cool.
It is really cool, yeah. And yeah, so Amazon Instant, which is cool. I guess Sony has their own weird thing, but I've never touched it.
Of course they do.
And Netflix, which I use all the time. Voodoo, Hulu Plus. I actually signed up for a free trial just to play with it. It's retarded. You know that it has commercials in it.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah.
So they show you more content, but it still has commercials.
A lot of commercials too. Like I was watching South Park, 2 commercials, intro, a commercial, then the show, 2 commercials, a little bit more of the show, commercial at the end.
That's bullcrap.
Yeah, I was like, I could watch this on South Park's site, but this is actually spurring me to just torrent the damn thing because this is so bad.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. And then
I know, it's like, show me like one ad in the middle.
Yeah.
And charge people more for that ad. It's
or just
like,
charge people like they do Netflix, and don't bait and switch you're like, oh cool, if I'm watching Hulu on my computer, which a lot of people do, and all these plus signs are everywhere, you're like, dang, maybe I should just sign up and get those, and then you realize it's just commercials there too.
Yeah. Jeez.
Like, what the hell? So anyway, it has YouTube, which I've been using a lot of. Crackle, do you know what that is? They have a YouTube channel where they have just like full-length movies and stuff.
Oh no, I never heard of it.
It's kind of cool. Like if you go into the Crackle one,
this thing seems pretty snappy too. Like it's not dragging its feet. Like it really is scrolling through the menus fast. Those thumbnails popped up quick.
Mm-hmm. Like it has real movies like Ghostbusters and stuff. These have
Godzilla.
These have commercials. These are kind of like sort of good, sort of bad movies.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so Netflix looks basically like the Netflix that Apple does, or the Apple menu. And what's nice when you do the what's it called, the iPhone remote, is that whenever you're in a menu where you need to type, you don't have to use this stupid thing. You can just use your phone.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
So you can just use your phone to type on it. I don't know. Let's play something that's whatever. I'll play some of The Office. And so yeah, I've been enjoying this thing. This like I've set up my my like home office area to be like always in view of the TV, and now I can actually watch whatever.
Well, it tells you like
It
tells you the download speed that you're getting too.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Sorry, I pressed return. It came back. So yeah, I've been having some fun with this thing. Let's see. I'll play this. And what else was I gonna say about it?
Is this? Oh, this is Netflix still. Okay.
Yeah, this is. So yeah, it tells you your download speed. You can kind of see that on the side.
Kind of off in the corner.
What are you getting? 13.
13.6 megabits per second.
Nice. So.
Not quite what I'm paying for, but that's pretty good.
What is this supposed to be?
I get 20 down and 5 up.
Oh, okay.
20 down and 4 up. But Comcast is my ISP. They're great. I mean, they always give me more than I actually pay for, unless it's like midday.
I always forget what my speeds are, but anyway. So yeah.
Cool. What's this thing called?
It has a really bad name.
Of course it does.
Another Sony.
Is the Sony AJX257?
Pretty much.
But it's not the AJ25X257 regular. It's the .2 version, right?
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Dude, it's Sony SMP-N200.
I was so close!
Yeah.
That's great.
And I feel like, that's probably the worst thing about that, something that's pretty close to being really good, but it's still a little too geeky, to be anything that's viable. But I was really impressed that I went to Target and they had this thing that obviously does like everything, and they had this little RCA box for $50, $60, something like that, and it was. It did like Netflix and everything else too, YouTube. I'm really surprised that there's all these boxes. Roku, of course, that's been around
Roku's
forever.
a really popular one.
But I was really surprised that there's so many different ones that have popped up that can hook up to your flat TV and whatever. But I've been liking YouTube and stuff like this. Like I've been searching, different podcasts and
it is cool that it integrates so well with YouTube too.
Or just I want to see just Foundation episodes, and it will just run through them and stuff.
Speaking of Foundation, dude, when's he gonna release a new episode?
Dude, he fell off.
Kevin Rose,
he's a Googler now.
What is going on with you, dude? Yeah,
he's just doing
Foundation, your new podcast, which never has episodes available.
So, that's my little device that I bought, and I'm having some fun with it. So I wanted to show it to you.
It's neat that. I mean, there's so many things that are outside the Apple universe. I'm so immersed in the Apple universe. Sometimes I forget that, and they're usually not. They're not super polished. They're not as polished as Apple products are. But it's easy to forget how expandable they are, or how much more flexible they can be, feature wise. Because Apple doesn't let you do half as many things as this thing. I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
see now that's cool.
Stitcher, whose smart radio mobile app offers over 5,000 other
Stitcher.
shows to discover based on Stitcher's custom.
Because they always want you to be in their ecosystem, 100%. And arguably so does Sony. But so it's really impressive that Sony has
Sony realizes no one's going to be there.
This
so
thing you can freaking, here, I'll show you guys up close. It's obviously just basically an Apple TV clone.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot like an Apple TV, except...
Maybe a little tiny bit bigger.
Yeah, totally.
It's about the size of a Mac Mini. And but then you look on the side here, and that sold me. I was like, wait, I can just plug any damn file I want into that thing, and it will play it.
Yeah, that's a cool feature.
And it tells you, it plays like Xvid and everything. Even like, and it wasn't really that hard to set up either. So once you actually get it on your network, it's a lot easier to download the phone app and then actually navigate through the phone app.
That makes sense.
So, anyways, that was my little.
Awesome.
Device, and if you want to go check it out, they have it at Target or I guess at electronic stores, and it's SMP 200 by Sony.
I'm sure you can remember that. Don't bother writing that down. Cool, dude. Well, that's it for this week.
Cool.
Good episode. Thanks for watching, guys. All 6 of you. We really appreciate your views.
Where can we find you on the internet?
So if you're interested in my tweets, which I hear are nice, I'm at Erfon, ERFON on Twitter, and if you're interested in Mike Tees, MIGHTTEES on Twitter as well, MikeTees.com also. What about you?
You can find me on Twitter, just my full name, ROBERTOHOYOS, Roberto Hoyos. And Throwboy as well, if you want to follow Throwboy's tweets.
Fantastic.
I think that's it. So, throwboy.com. So, yeah, man.
All right. We will catch you guys next week.
Peace out.